Okay, this last part of the chapter contains so much that there's no way we're going to be able to get it all in. I've kind of picked and chosen things that I want to emphasize because there's a lot about the modern situation with Hinduism in the world, and so we'll get through as much of it as we can. Meditation, okay, which version of Hinduism really placed an emphasis on meditation? Yeah, the Upanishads, the Upanishadic tradition, right? That doesn't mean that meditation didn't exist before, but it became a big deal. And this is a word that you probably should know, Yoga Sutras. Now, anybody in the medical world would understand what a suture is. Maybe you do too. Does anybody know what a suture is? If you're having a procedure done, they might suture something. What is suture? Suture is to stitch up. So it's a nice way of saying we're going to sew you up, okay? And that word comes from Sanskrit. So they use it in the medical world, and it refers to threads. It literally means threads. So a yoga suture, the word yoga is from the Sanskrit for discipline, and sutra, which we say suture, means a thread, but they refer to it as manuals, okay, that sort of thing. So basically what meditation is disciplining yourself to study the threads or the manuals that are part of the Hindu written tradition. Okay? Just interesting where words come from. I don't know about you, but I really enjoy studying the etymology and origin of words. I think it's fascinating. Okay. And they also came up with an 8-stage process. And some believe, I don't know that it's proven, but some believe that the 8-stage process of, arriving at the place of liberation it was actually a reaction to the 8-fold path of Buddhism that we'll study when we do Buddhism. Because remember, Buddhism comes out of Hinduism, and there were some things that Buddhism did that Hinduism reacted to. And so some think that the 8-stage process actually came after the development of Buddhistic teaching. And here's just a picture that I found. You don't need to know any of that, but these are the 8 elements of that process that all have to do with what you try to become. And you can find a lot of stuff about this online. These are referred to as limbs, just like the limbs of your body. That's the word they use to refer to those elements. Okay? And then faith in a God, doesn't matter which one. That's why, remember, if you're evangelizing a Hindu, it's not enough to say, would you be willing to receive Jesus? They say, oh, absolutely. Okay? I think John MacArthur tells about a case years ago when that happened. Somebody responded to an invitation in a service and trusted Christ, only to find out later that they were adding one more God to their collection. So it's very, very important that we understand that. These are not piranhas like fish, okay? These are Puranas, which is a word that means ancient. And there is a set of sacred books that presents a lot of information on some of the ancient gods. Remember those 4 that we looked at that I told you didn't need to remember because they pertain to the Vedas, and nobody really talks about those gods today? That would be part of this idea. But the ones that are prominent today are Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. They present these Puranas. I know it sounds really fishy, but these Puranas present a theistic concept of God. Again, when Hindus talk about theism, they're talking about a God concept that includes attributes. That's really all that you need to remember, okay? Which, of course, is what we believe. We present a theistic view of the God of the Bible because he is a God who possesses attributes. And these writings are also classified as smriti. Now, what does that mean? Do you remember the corresponding word? Shruti. So Shruti refers to what comes directly from the gods, right? And Smriti may not come directly from the gods, but they're still considered ancient and important teachings of of Hinduism. And each one of these sacred books focuses on a specific deity. I do not know which ones, and you don't need to know that either. And they're divided into 3 groups in honor of Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva. Notice Brahma without the N. And this is what they call the Trimurti, which means three forms or images. Don't confuse this with Trinity. The Hindus do not believe in a triune Godhead. This is not a Hindu form of the Trinity, okay? They just use that term because each of these represents, what they consider to be attributes of one of the major deities, three of the major deities worshipped in Hinduism. But it's not viewed as a triunity like we would think. Okay? And then all of this is supposed to lead to what they call bhakti, which is devotional worship. Remember in the story of Varuna, the Krishna thing, he was the chariot rider that we told last week. Okay, what was the final outcome? Remember that third level of yoga was the level of devotion. Remember that Varuna was trying to figure out how he could perform his dharma and go to battle and at the same time dissociate with himself. And so Krishna, who was the driver, told him that he could still do his duty but detach himself from the pleasures of it and the spoils of war. And so rather than making pleasure in that, he would transfer that to loyalty to his God. And Krishna ends up becoming his God when he reveals himself to Varuna. That's the idea of this bhakti, the devotional worship that is, and that can be to any God. There's no stipulation of which God that is. So this is one of hundreds and hundreds of images you can find online depicting these three major ones. And your book does go into a little bit of detail about them. Just the only one that I think I'll point out right now is that Brahma, that's Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Brahma has 4 heads, 4 faces. Okay, do you remember, have you read about that? Remember why that is, what they say that depicts? I don't know if you've read that far, I can't remember where you are. The idea, one of the many ideas about Brahma and his origin and all that, is that out of him came woman. Interesting. You think of the account in Genesis, out of him came a woman, and it was a beautiful woman, and he wanted to be able to follow her and watch her everywhere she went. So the 4 heads pointing in 4 directions enabled him to do that. That's just one of the many theories, but it's a popular theory about the reason he has 4 heads. And also, some believe that he actually came out of an egg that was floating on. I mean, there's just a lot of potential stuff packed into these images, and we just don't have time to try to dissect all that. There's another depiction of him with the 4 heads. Okay, this is Brahma, creator. You notice the ever obvious red dot on the forehead. Does anybody know what that red dot refers to? Well, and again, there's more than one idea, but let me just pull up a site here that presents at least one explanation about where this red dot comes from. I'm going to read part of this. Aside from the beautiful saris and gold jewelry that characterize much of Indian subcontinent culture, one of the most internationally known body adornments worn by Hindu and Jainism comes out of Hinduism, women is the bindi, a red dot applied between the eyebrows on the forehead. The term bindi stems from the Sanskrit word bindu, which means drop or particle. Because of the many languages and dialects spoken throughout India, it is important to note that bindis are otherwise known by many other names. Let me just pull up a little bit more of this for you. However, the meaning behind the ornament, regardless of the region or language, remains the same. Around 3000 BC, the Rishi Muni, ancient seers of Hinduism, wrote the Vedas, in which they describe the existence of areas of concentrated energy called chakras. There are 7 main chakras that run along the center of the body, and the 6th one, called the Ajna chakra, The brow chakra, or third eye chakra, occurs exactly where the bindi is placed. In Sanskrit, ajna translates as command or perceive and is considered the eye of intuition and intellect. According to the Vedas, when something is seen in the mind's eye or in a dream, it is also seen by ajna, which is that third eye. Thus, the bindi's purpose is to enhance the powers of this chakra, specifically by facilitating one's ability to access their inner wisdom or guru, allowing them to see the world and interpret things in a truthful, unbiased manner, as well as forsake their ego and rid their false labels. Hindu tradition holds that all people have a third inner eye. The two physical eyes are used for seeing the external world, while the third focuses inward toward God, and that could be any number of gods. As such, the red dot signifies piety, as well as serving as a constant reminder to keep God at the center of one's thoughts. I mean, and again, you could probably find all kinds of other explanations. That's one. I won't bother reading the rest of it here. You can if you want to. But so it's kind of another level of perception that a person has when he makes use of this. I thought it was interesting talking about the different, where is it? There's 6 energy, areas of concentrated energy. And you guys are aware of, things like acupuncture and even pushing on different, parts of your feet or whatever that affect other parts of your body. I think it's a fairly scientifically demonstrated fact that there are pressure points in parts of your body that affect, other parts of your body. We don't question that, but that has also become for many more than just a biological reality. For many of them, it communicates spiritual reality as well. Anyway, again, you'll probably find different explanations coming from different people. Yeah?
Kind of on the third eye thing, have you heard anything with that related to animism at all?
With what?
Animism?
No, have you? What have you heard?
Well, I was just curious, like, if you had known anything about it, because in Togo especially, like, they would have 3 eyes, on their murals and everything.
Okay.
And I was just curious if you knew.
No.
I don't really know anything more than, I just saw it, thought of it.
That's interesting. I do not know. I wasn't aware of that.
I didn't know.
Yeah. You saw that in Togo. In any particular, ceremony or anything, or is it just something you see around?
We'd have ceremonies, even right outside the airport, they have a mural of, random things,
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them have 3 eyes.
Interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if there are connections because, there's no way we can assume that animism and Hinduism are totally mutually exclusive. There has to be, if you go back far enough, you can probably find some sort of commonality there. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, no, I may take a peek and see if I can find something. If you happen to come up with something too, let us know. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so that's Brahma. One of the things that actually here, let's give you a few points here. He's the first of the gods, creator of the world. You might think that because he's considered the first of the gods that he'd be the most important. Actually, he's not. We'll see that in a second. And here are the Puranas that we just talked about. According to the Puranas, he was born from a golden egg floating on primal waters and is a creation of Brahman, Isaac. Okay, comes out of the Brahman idea. Again, this is one of how many explanations for his origin. Here, foreheads and hands sprang up when he had created a female and wanted to see her at all times. Just think of the poverty of even that idea that he had to have 4 heads to be able to follow her and see her wherever she was. You know what I'm saying? There's just something about that it's just sad to think that you would have to conceive of a God that needed 4 heads to follow her. It's just really strange. Each head also produced one of the 4 Vedas. You know that the Rig Veda is the chief of 4 different Vedic volumes. And according to at least some Hindus, out of each one of his heads came one of the Vedas. Some Hindus believe he came from Vishnu. See, so he's called the first of the gods, the chief. But some believe that he actually proceeded out of Vishnu. Others do not. All right? Okay, so we've seen this before, and these are the emanations, or some would even use the word incarnations, because that's really what an avatar is. It's an incarnation. Again, you see the subtlety of Satan in substituting the truth, right? And, okay, so let's talk a little bit about Vishnu next then. Again, remember that many believe that at one time he was the chief god, he was the creator, and then when the idea of the Brahma came, he became the creator, and Vishnu then was designated the preserver, and Shiva then the opposer. Okay? I mean, it's just sad to think about all the confusion that surrounds this. He's by far the most popular god. We've made that observation several times. Followers are called Vaishnava. Now, I'm probably slaughtering the pronunciation, and those who speak these languages will have to forgive me. And they mark their heads with a V. So if you see something like this, not necessarily exactly like what this guy has, but when you see that, then you can be pretty sure that somebody that has a symbol like that on his forehead is a follower of Vishnu. Now, does that mean that that's the only god this person follows? Probably not. Most of them would probably acknowledge many gods, but they would have a chief god. That's what we're getting at here. His 10 avatars appear to preserve order when it's threatened. So what happens when Shiva is opposing him and the order of things is being, threatened? Then these avatars kind of, if I can say, come to the rescue. They kind of worked in order to maintain order and preservation of things. Okay? Vaishnavas believe all deities came from Vishnu, including Brahma. So there's the idea that Vishnu is actually the original god. But then where did he come from? There's that view that everything came out of the Puranas originally. So but again, I know I've said this before. Remember that in Hinduism, it's not so much who has the right story, which narrative is right, because narrative is not a big deal. Historical accuracy is not the main thing. It's what comes out of these stories. So they're okay with a variety of stories. It doesn't really matter as long as eventually, there's some meaning for them in it. It's just a very different way of thinking. Yes?
Do you want all their gods
No, I don't. Have you heard anything to that? I don't. I thought that something was said about color. Yeah. Well, okay. No. Brahma. Another purpose of his forehead was to create the four Vedas. Out of each head emerged a Veda. He is red in color, dressed in white, and rides a goose. Now, I don't know. Was this? Yeah. No. Back here. That's not red, but again, you'll find all kinds of variations. So apparently, the dominant idea of Brahma is red. Yeah. What? Yeah. Here's a depiction of Shiva, and that's not blue, but you do see a lot of blue, and I'm not sure what that depicts. Remember when I said at the beginning of the semester, we come in as kindergartners and we go out as kindergartners in this, and we just do. But even your average Hindu is probably unaware of the multiplicity of views that there are. They grew up with a certain view of things, and many of them would probably be surprised to know that there exist all these other versions of what things signify. It just shows the sadness. And again, if you try to present to them the scriptures as an objective one-way street on things, how things happen, their response to you may be, well, yours is just cheap and shallow. The richness of our religion shows how superior it is to others. Shiva, the destroyer. Now, I want you to notice a couple things. There's a serpent going around his neck, and it is common to see images of Shiva with a necklace of some sort that is in the form of a serpent, which also is quite interesting. Where did that idea come from? This goes all the way back to the garden. Also, do you notice the position of the hands? One hand's like this, the other hand's like that, okay? Any idea why they might be that way? And again, there are probably several explanations. Okay, one of the things the author says, and it's very important to remember, is that these religions feed on one another, okay? There's some common things. We're going to study Taoism later on, and Taoism emphasizes the yin-yang, the balance of everything. There's no good and evil. There's just white, dark, cold, hot. Even health and sickness aren't viewed as sickness not viewed as an evil construct or a result of evil. All these opposing ideas are necessary in order to create balance. That's very much a Taoist teaching, but it is represented in the person of Shiva. Remember that some even suggested that Shiva and Vishnu are both necessary to balance out each other, and Brahma kind of comes out to be the mediator between the two, not to destroy one or the other, but so you even see Taoistic ideas, the yin-yang balance, coming through in the idea of Shiva here in Hinduism. Just really complex. I have no idea why there's another serpent head down here, but those are a couple things. Also, the head, his hair is considered to be very tightly woven and braided, and some believe that the Indus River flowed from his hair. That the flowing of the hair actually produced the Indus River. Things like that. Just yeah. No, that's okay.
I don't think this is true, but is Shiva also able to destroy other gods?
I'm sure that you're going to find Hindus out there will say yes. Yeah, and others may say no. I mean, if you believe in the presence of 330 million gods, you have to believe that there is controversy within all of those, and that some overpower others, which introduces an animistic idea that we talked about, right? The idea of gods that can conquer others, and the goal in Hinduism or animism is to find a god that is more powerful. So yeah, I'm sure that would happen. I can't give you any examples though. Yep. So Shiva, his followers are called Shaivas, and paint 3 horizontal lines on their foreheads. So instead of the V that we saw with Vaishyas, you see the 3 lines, okay, on their foreheads. And again, they wouldn't all look exactly the same. He's a god of paradoxes, which is part of the reason for you see the hands the way they are, right? Something that is opposite, contrary, polar. He's renunciant and householder. In other words, renunciant is the guy that's going to become a monk or what's the word I want? Somebody goes off on his own, becomes a vagabond kind of, but he's also a householder. He can be celibate and husband, both those ideas. So you have Sannyasa, yeah, that's that. Remember that the Upanishads added that idea to the Vedic idea of retirement was just to study the Vedas and all that. And the Upanishads said, you become sannyasi in order to seek deliverance from the samsara cycle. So again, there's a lot of paradoxes here. The dancing Shiva, which is pictured over there, and again, there are lots and lots of versions of that, is a popular depiction of him. Now there's blue in that one. He's actually got a bluish, but I don't know why. That's a good question. I'm game to learn some more about this stuff. If you guys come up, give you a little extra credit if you find out what that blue is all about. Okay, so those are the 3 main ones. We're going to spend the rest of our 10 minutes, modern movements. Okay, Republic of India was formed in 1947. A lot of things happened in 47 in the world, right? World War II ended in 45. Israel becomes a state when? 48. And Republic of India was formed in 47. That has to do with Mahatma Gandhi. We'll come back. Since the 17th century, socio-political developments have caused major change in Hindu religious life. Okay, and some of that has to do with the British influence and other countries that influenced their politics. The Mughal Empire was a very big piece of the the puzzle in that area from 1526 to 1707, almost 200 years. But notice this was an Islamic dynasty, okay, not a Hindu dynasty. And there is a strong element. One pastor that I know claims that as many as 25% of the population is Islamic. Most people would lower that number, but there is a significant Islamic element, and that was developed during the Mughal Empire. The British East India Company came in 1600 and was there for almost 300 years. And then when there was rebellion and an uprising, they eventually removed the East India Company and replaced it with the British Raj, which means rule. And so the British, pulled out the company, but they established a very strong rule in India. Now, just what parts of India they ruled, I'll show you in a second on a map. Here's the Mughal Empire, the Islamic Empire, and you don't need to know any of this. I'm just showing you that it happened in different stages depicted by these colors, and we won't take more time. And it was actually during the Mughal Empire that things like the Taj Mahal were made. So the Taj Mahal, even though it's in India, is actually a Muslim construct. It is a tomb built by a king when his wife died after delivering their 14th child. And so, just the guy had money coming out of his ears, Here's another one. I do not know what this one is, but it's another temple. And these are in North India. And this is another shot of the Mughal Empire. Again, you don't need to know anything about the development of it. The British Raj, after the days of the East India Company, in 1857, that's getting very recent, the British removed the East India Company and replaced it with the direct rule of the British Raj. Because again, there was rebellion against the East India Company, threats, and it was beginning to be very dangerous for them. So the British kind of came in with a strong bicep politically. This greatly challenged religion and culture in India. Okay, there's a lot of, even today, there's a lot of British influence, a lot of Western influence in India because of them. The Indian National Congress was led by Mahatma Gandhi. We talked about him. And it was through his influence that independence eventually was won by the Indian National Congress in 1947. Now, don't think of a big revolutionary bloodbath, like you hear in other places. It was really more through political maneuvering that independence was won. Remember, the British also pulled out of Israel in 1948. Remember the British Mandate? We'll actually talk about that in Judaism. And they pulled out after the war. Well, 3 years after the war. The Muslim League sought to create an independent Muslim state in India. So as Hinduism began to grow more, the remnants of that Mughal Empire, the Islamic influence there, they said, hey, we need a place that we can call Muslim. And so what happened? Well, Pakistan was created as a Muslim state, and you all know where Pakistan is. So Pakistan actually was created in two parts: West Pakistan, which is Pakistan today, and East Pakistan, which today is Bangladesh, right? So that's why you have this little tiny section up here that, and then this big section when you look at a map of India. That's because this portion here that used to be part of India is now independent. It's Bangladesh. Okay? All right. Whoops. That's the last. Okay. There is a guy that I want to mention to you in closing here. And again, I'm sorry we can't get more of this, but on page 105, the last section at the bottom mentions a guy named Swami Vivekananda. Okay, now that name may not mean anything to you, but the fact is he probably more than any other individual, Hindu intellectual influenced the West toward Hinduism. There's a picture of him on 107, a photograph of him, and let me just read down near the bottom of 107, if you have your book. Well, actually, Okay, 5 minutes. Let me start at the top of the second paragraph. Swami Vivekananda was the famous disciple of another guy, a Bengali Vaishnava, follower of Vishnu, right? Brahmin, so he was from the Brahmin caste, but he was a follower of Vishnu, and he served as a priest in a temple devoted to the goddess Kali near Calcutta. Although many Westerners may be unfamiliar with Ramakrishna, whom we study, remember Rama and Krishna are both actually names of two avatars of Vishnu. Most are familiar with his ideas, for he suggested that behind all religious practices and behind all the particular religions themselves stands the one God. Okay? Ramakrishna arrived at the conclusion of the essential unity of all religions through his experience of deep meditative practice, where he had visions of many deities, including Jesus Christ and Allah. So Christianity and Islam are brought into this discussion. And what was crucial to note is that the basis for Ramakrishna's insights was the religious experience of deep meditation. Now just let me jump down to the next paragraph. While Ramakrishna was an early visionary in the unity of everything, it would be his most renowned disciple, Swami Vivekananda, who would popularize this vision, promoting it throughout much of the Western world. Swami Vivekananda had a tremendous impact on the modern understanding of Hinduism, particularly in the West. He visited the United States. He addressed the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago in 1893. And for about 3 years, he toured the U.S. and England, delivering lectures advocating Vedanta, Vedic, from the Veda philosophy and the insights of his guru, Ramakrishna. Swami Vivekananda's speech at the World Parliament of Religions became the basis for the Western understanding of Hinduism for the next several generations. Even today, his legacy remains. In fact, one source I read said that when he spoke at this World Parliament of Religions, he was so eloquent and so charismatic in the way he did that he was considered to be the greatest of all the orators that were part of that. So his impact, can't be underestimated. And so it's just a guy whose name, Swami, is probably the name that most people use but if you mention his name, my generation would at least, remember that. So late 1800s, he does a lot to bring the teachings of Hinduism to the West. All right. Well, I think that gives us enough to think about. Pray for Brother Stan that he would be able to come Thursday. I really would like to be able to welcome him to class. Just going to depend on how he's feeling, and we'll take it from there. Thank you.